You're listening to the HawgBeat Hour with Andrew Hutchinson, Alex Trader, and Mason Choate on ESPN Arkansas and HitThatLine.com. Now, here's your host, Mason Choate.
Welcome into the HawgBeat Hour. I'm your host, Mason Choate. Got Andrew Hutchinson and Alex Trader from HawgBeat.com along with me. Before we get started, I just want to ask if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, click the subscribe button. I don't really do that as often as I should, but got to take care of that business because that's stuff that helps us. Helps us with our business and helps us to know what you guys like and what you don't like. So without further ado, we're going to start with basketball today. Usually we talk football a lot more in the early segments, but we're going to start with basketball because it's what's most fresh. So Arkansas, big win against LSU over the weekend, and then they take care of business against South Carolina on Tuesday. But I mean, everybody who listens to this knows Andrew Hutchinson, and I think it's safe to say that the win was overshadowed by a bigger loss. Hutch.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but yes, the three-pointer streak did end on Tuesday. Arkansas goes 0 of 11 from beyond the arc. They had made a three in 1,092 consecutive games. That streak dated back to 1989. It was a 33-year streak. It was definitely I want to say it's a big deal just because it has been going for 33 years. And it was the third longest streak in college basketball, third longest active streak behind only UNLV and Duke. But I mean, really, as people have pointed out to me on social media, like I don't know this, it is a meaningless stat. It has zero correlation between wins and losses because over 33 years, Arkansas has seen the highest of highs with the 94 national championship and the lowest of lows of the Stan Heath, John Pelfrey era. So it's not a super big deal. Yes, it was kind of a fun thing to keep track of. But again, it's over. It's better to smile because it happened rather than, be sad that it ended or whatever the saying is. So I'm totally okay. I know people were reaching out to me acting like, I'd lost a family member or something, but I'm okay. And the basketball team still won. So that's all that really matters.
Hutch, you did write a column on HawgBeat.com talking about the streak and kind of how it's affected your life. And, you said it's a meaningless stat, but I read that column and it almost brought a tear to my eye. I sent you a text like, it's weird, and I'm not joking. Like, it's actually like an emotional story. It's something that it was a big deal because you, as a stats guy, that is a big deal, and it's kind of what some people knew you by as the guy who's going to tweet out, the streak lives. But as you said, we can start anew, and it really doesn't matter as long as Arkansas got a W. So they did. Let's go back to the LSU game though. So Arkansas goes and beats number 12 LSU. Eric Musselman not there. He had just had surgery. Keith Smart was coaching the team. This game, I don't know. It's one of those games where you just felt like LSU did not want to win. There were so many times where it was like LSU's just inviting Arkansas to come win this game. And sure enough, the Hogs won it, and it was not expected, Hutch.
No, this is a game that I think most of us expected them to lose. I mean, they had not been playing particularly well. Yes, they had just blown out Missouri, but Missouri is just terrible basketball team. And then for them to go on the road against an LSU team that was really, really good, had only lost one time before that. Most people had expected that to be a loss. Most analytics, the spread in Vegas, it all favored LSU. But I will say that Arkansas has figured something out defensively. I mean, we'll talk about it, with both games, but they have played really, really good defense. So they locked down LSU. And even whenever Arkansas was having a hard time scoring, they were going up against LSU, which has the number one defense in the country, or at least at that time was ranked the number one defense, according to Ken Palm's, adjusted efficiency ratings. But there were stretches where Arkansas wasn't scoring, but they also weren't allowing LSU to score. And Arkansas, I think that was kind of the biggest problem during where they lost, I think, 5 of 6 games or something like that. It was because of defense. They could not stop a nosebleed, and they have figured that out, seemingly. I don't know if it's just a matter of buy-in or guys just finally clicking or what, but that really is what kind of carried them to that win, because I mean, I think Keith Smart said it after the game. Even though they weren't scoring themselves, they were keeping LSU from scoring and keeping it within striking distance. I think LSU's biggest lead was 8, and it really could have been worse than that because Arkansas had some really long scoring droughts. So, especially with JD Notae kind of battling some foul issues, not being on the court, things like that. But down the stretch, they figured it out. They kept that defensive intensity going. And I think they ended the game on, I want to say, like on a 17-2 run. Really, really impressive way to finish a ball game, to come up with a big critical win to kind of keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive.
Yeah, that was a big win because Arkansas prior to that, I don't even know if they had a quad one win, Hutch. I mean, maybe no. Okay, I was thinking maybe Cincinnati, but LSU, that was a big win. They did go and lose to Alabama on Wednesday night, but it's still a team that has 15 wins and only 3 losses. So LSU is still a good basketball team. You have to think they're going to figure it out. And Alabama kind of on a same little streak that Arkansas went on. They're 12-6, but they finally got a win over LSU. So but one of the guys that has been the key contributor in my mind and in most people's minds, aside from JD Notae, a guy who you're going to have to rely on no matter what, but it's Jaylin Williams. He's got 4 straight games where he scored double-digit points. Prior to that in his career, he never had 2 games in a row where he scored double-digit points. And 3 of those games he had a triple or a double-double, not a triple-double, a double-double, and he almost got a double-double against South Carolina. He was 1 rebound away. But I want to bring Alex Trader in on this. We talked about it before the season. I think last week we did our overreaction or not, and one of our questions was, is Jaylin Williams a legit big in the SEC? And I mean, like maybe he heard that question and now he went and played against LSU and South Carolina, and he's like, yeah, I am. So how important has Jaylin Williams been to this Arkansas basketball team?
It's been massive. I mean, you look at it and not only the numbers are there and the numbers are great. You always want to see some sort of tangible production when you're looking at how a guy's playing, but it's not just the rebounds and the points. You can see him scrapping for loose balls. You see him putting in that extra effort that maybe this team you weren't seeing that same want to earlier on in the season, especially in that losing skid. I think when you're looking at those top level teams, we last week for that LSU game we're kind of like, hey, if we see Arkansas keep this game close, or if they don't get blown out, then could they still be a tournament team? And they went out and won the thing. I think none of us were expecting that. And Jaylin Williams was a big part of why he hit that clutch 3. And I think, his production rising is helping this team kind of find their momentum and find their swagger. And when you have a basketball team that especially in college, it's new players mostly. Every single season, you're not really going to see the same lineup in back-to-back years, especially at these top schools. It's very important that you're able to find that chemistry, and it looks like Arkansas might be finding it with this new group of players rather than Jaylin Williams and what he had last year.
Yeah, I like what you said about the chemistry. It felt like when they played South Carolina on Tuesday night, there were a couple moments where you would see Jaylin Williams, shaking his hand, getting the crowd to get loud. And you would see they had a couple of possessions on offense where the passing was just there and they were smiling, and you could tell that these guys are starting to click. And over the past 2 games, it's really just been 7 guys that have been contributing for Arkansas. And so it feels like you finally got that lineup down to what you want. And Hutch against South Carolina at the beginning of the game, prior to Jaylin Williams getting 2 fouls and JD Notae getting 2 fouls, it was really just those 2 scoring. And at times it feels like, and you did a stat where it was like the plus minus with JD Notae on and off the court. But at times it feels like Arkansas really has to rely on just JD Notae and maybe whoever else is hot that night to keep them in a ball game.
JD Notae is that guy. I mean, I know we talked about it last week in the, one of the questions we posed was, is JD Notae doing too much? And I think we all agreed that no, he's not, because he's doing what he needs to do. The offense has just been non-existent without him on the floor. Occasionally you get somebody like a Jaylin Williams or a Stanley Amude or someone steps up and provides a little offensive punch as well. But there's JD Notae, the steady hand. I mean, he's scored double digits every game he's played, and he's, as of right now, second in the SEC in scoring. He is 0.05 of a point away or behind Scottie Pippen Jr. over at Vanderbilt. So really, really close to having the SEC scoring title. So yeah, he's been phenomenal. And you mentioned that stat. I mean, they're, I want to say, plus 49 with him on the floor against, I guess it's been against South Carolina and LSU, and they're like minus 23 or something like that without him on the floor. I mean, it's a dramatic difference with him on and off the floor. So JD Notae has been phenomenal. Plus, he's starting to kind of not be, some people like kind of criticize him as being a ball hog. He's improved that. He's become a better passer. I think he's gotten his teammates involved better. And it's not maybe necessarily showing up in like a bunch of assists or anything, and he still has some turnovers, but he seems to be running the offense a little bit better as a point guard rather than just being a score first guy all the time.
Well, I mean, Notae had 5 of Arkansas's 8 assists against South Carolina. So at least in that game, he was really the only guy aside from Jaylin Williams, who we know is a great passer, that was facilitating the ball, at least on the stat sheet. I'd have to go back and watch the game to really get into that. But Alex, a lot of people on our message board, the Trough, go subscribe to HawgBeat.com. Wonderful message board. Sometimes gets out of hand, but that's the fun of it. A lot of people talked about how it really drops off once you get done with the starting 5. So do you think that that's going to hurt Arkansas down the stretch if they don't have guys that can come off the bench and like legitimately contribute? Because we kind of, before I asked Hush that question, you kind of hit on it, was Arkansas does not do great without JD Notae on the court. They don't have that many guys who can score the basketball very well. I mean, there are guys who historically have been great scorers, but it feels like they're just not there anymore.
Yeah, baseball is the ultimate grind of a season, and basketball is right up there too. You have it's a long season. You have a lot of games you have to go through, and playing those long minutes takes a toll on the starters. So you definitely need some sort of depth behind them. I'm not quite convinced that it's not gonna come this season. At this point, I know we haven't really seen it all that well yet. Like Hutch mentioned, that's a crazy plus minus swing when JD Notae is on the court versus off. But I think really it does come down to must needs to get these guys in the flow of the game, find lineups that work together. It doesn't necessarily have to be your best next guys off the bench, but they do have to fit with the guys that are on the court. And I think that's really the thing that it's going to come down to is the coaching versus what exactly the players are bringing. Because I think, about 20-ish games into the season, you're really starting to figure out who you are as a team. And we see what these players are able to do when they get their time. It's a matter of figuring out, hey, how do we maximize that?
Hutch, last year, I feel like down the stretch for Arkansas, there were a couple X factors coming off the bench, and eventually they were starting. But I mean, it's Devo Davis and Jaylin Williams. And so those are 2 guys that are important to your lineup this year, but it might be one of them. It might not. Who's an X factor that you can think of down the stretch for Arkansas this year that you're like, this guy has to start performing for Arkansas to make it to the NCAA tournament?
Honestly, I feel like it's the same guy who was last year, and that's Devo Davis. I mean, he was a guy that didn't play much early in the season as a freshman, had a couple of games where he didn't even come off the bench at all. And then by the end of the season, as you said, he was in the starting lineup, and he was just a critical piece of that team. I think he's still critical. I think I want to say Eric Musselman has even mentioned it early in the season or before the season that, this team will go as far as Devo Davis can take it. And I mean, I think that maybe that's changed a little bit, and that is JD Notae's team. But I think Devo Davis is still incredibly important. Maybe he doesn't have the exact role that they expected him to have. I mean, I think we can all agree that him being used as a point guard has not worked out very well. But if he can just do kind of the things he did last year, work off the ball, play really good defense, things like that, which he struggled with those things. Even the things he did really well last year, he struggled with this year. If he can get to where he can do those things, just not even like better than he was last year, just the same level as he was last year, then I think that would really help Arkansas and could lead to them, having a really, really strong finish this season.
All right, before we wrap up, Arkansas gets A&M coming to Bud Walton Arena on Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Revenge game is what it could be. Arkansas, I mean, is it a must win? Because this is one of those games where you've got to get this one out of the way because the schedule only gets tougher, Hutch.
Yeah, I think this one, I think that we're in the middle of like a 5-game stretch where they really need to win the every game, because these are games they should win. I mean, we're talking Texas A&M this weekend, I think Ole Miss next weekend. You got West Virginia coming to town in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Then you've got Georgia in that stretch. Those are all teams you should beat. You cannot afford another Vanderbilt-like loss. Plus, you need to win as many games as you are. I mean, you're sitting at 3-3. I think 4 more games right now. If you can win, that would get you to 7-3. And then at that point, you just need to win 2 or 3 more games down the stretch to really kind of solidify yourself in the NCAA tournament. And then, more wins than that, you just improve your seed line. So in my opinion, yes, it's a must win. Like, yes, they can recover from it, but for them to make things easy on themselves, they really need to win these type of games that they're supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule after that 5-game stretch that you just mentioned, that it also includes Mississippi State. They then play Auburn, they play Alabama, Tennessee twice, Kentucky, LSU, Florida, and really your only cupcake, which who knows what it'll be at that point, is at Missouri. Um, that's a really tough second half of the schedule. So you're right, Arkansas is going to have to win at least 4 of the next 5. um, that would really set them up later on in the season. But that's going to wrap us up for basketball. Up next, we're going to talk transfer portal for football. A lot of movement going on, some surprising things, some things not so surprising. And then after that, we got Alex Trader going to talk some recruiting. He had a nice segment over on HawgBeat.com. We're going to add that in here. Alex, as always, doing a great job on the recruiting front for us. But we will be back with you here in a minute.
You're listening to the HawgBeat Hour with Andrew Hutchinson, Alex Trader, and Mason Choate on ESPN Arkansas on hitthatline.com. Now, here's your host, Mason Choate.
All right, we're back here on the HawgBeat Hour. Mason Choate with Alex Trader and Andrew Hutchinson from HawgBeat.com. We're the HawgBeat crew, and we are with you here to talk some Arkansas football, transfer portal news. But before we get to the transfer portal, breaking news. Kendal Briles is reportedly staying in Arkansas. So that is a big deal. Rumors of him possibly going to Miami. Hutch, you talked about before we started recording how he was kind of, I guess you could say he was kind of pulling a Lane Kiffin. He was posting random pictures, making people think he was everywhere. But here he is, and it's reported that he's staying at Arkansas, Hutch.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Before all the stuff came out that he was officially offered the job at Miami, he had posted a picture of him recruiting in Atlanta. And then I saw a tweet from Justin Stepp, the former Arkansas wide receivers coach, who actually worked a year with Kendal. He had posted like, "Oh, it's great to run into Kendal Briles tonight in Nashville." And then like a few hours later, I saw something where he was visiting recruits in Dallas. And I was like, okay, so this guy's all over the place. Probably just kind of putting it out there for Arkansas fans, like, hey, I'm happy here. I'm perfectly happy being the offensive coordinator for the Razorbacks. So yeah, it's a big deal for Arkansas. I know that there are some people out there, I'd probably call it a vocal minority, that do not like Kendal Briles at all, because he does have some head scratching calls. I mean, there have been plenty of times this season where I'm in the press box going, what in the world is he thinking? Like he goes brain dead, it seems like. But if you step back and look at it, Arkansas had its best offense in years this year. And if you take out, the one game against one of the all-time great defenses of Georgia, they were even better. I mean, one of the best in school history. And they averaged 200 yards on the ground, 200 yards to the air. It had been 50 years since Arkansas had done that. I mean, the last time they did it, Joe Ferguson was throwing the ball for Arkansas. So that tells you he's doing things at Arkansas that we have not seen. Obviously Bobby Petrino had some really good offenses. Arkansas had really good offenses with Darren McFadden and Felix Jones in the backfield. But I think what he did this year with KJ Jefferson was phenomenal. And keeping him on board, as well as keeping Barry Odom and all the other assistants, will just provide some continuity that you can kind of build on that 9-win season they just had.
Yeah. So the importance of keeping Brile, I mean, it's a big deal. And you said it, there's a lot of people who don't like him. And yes, there are some questionable play calls. I think of it like his offense is really boom or bust to me. Like you're either going to go 3 and out or you're going to go 2 plays, 80-yard touchdown. Like that's just how it feels sometimes, but it seems to have worked. And so you got to think, Alex, I'll bring you in on this. You're the recruiting guy. Do you think Kendal Briles probably played a big role in Arkansas getting plenty of talent on campus on the offensive side of the ball? I'm specifically thinking about the wide receiver room. I mean, Jaden Hazelwood, that's a former 5-star. So it seems like he had to have played a role in that.
Yeah, I put out my wide receiver big board the other day, and I wrote in it. It's hard to look at what Arkansas was able to do with Traylon Burks and to do with this offense, and not think, hey, what would happen if I was a part of this as a receiver? Not even just the receivers though. You've got guys, and this might just be a team success thing as well. I'm not putting all this entirely in the lap of Kendal Briles, but the team is succeeding in ways that we haven't seen in a long time. And that's bringing people in, being like, okay, I can go to Arkansas, enjoy the hill, and also win football games. And anytime you have that makes a staff that everyone seems to like, with Sam Pittman and Kendal Briles and Barry Odom and the position coaches, paired with winning, it's really hard not to at least be intrigued, or to think, hey, I'm going to give Arkansas a second look that maybe a couple of years ago I wouldn't have. And I think the offense performing the way that it did this season and putting up the numbers that it did certainly plays a large role in that.
So kind of related to what we're going to talk about here in a minute, transfer portal. I mean, the culture that Sam Pittman has built, he's not only recruiting players, he's recruiting coaches, and he's doing a great job at it. So Hutch, I mean, the importance of a guy who has created a program that 2 years ago was a program that was the bottom, not just of the Power 5, but of all of college football. And now it's almost a destination place to come in college football now. I mean, players want to be in Fayetteville, coaches want to be in Fayetteville, and everybody's talking about Arkansas football and Sam Pittman. How important is that, especially now that you're keeping a guy who was well sought after by a lot of teams?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider Kendal Briles' history. I mean, yeah, he was at Baylor for a while, under his dad and everything. But then the next 3 places he went, he was there for 1 year. He was never anywhere very long. And so for him to not only stick around for 2 years, but seemingly coming back for a third, it is just massive news for Arkansas. Especially when you factor in the fact that I don't think Kendal Briles and Sam Pittman knew each other before, they joined up in Arkansas. Barry Odom and Sam Pittman have a relationship. Like, they're really good friends. They've known each other for a while. They had a mutual respect. So it's not super surprising that Barry Odom would stick around, for a third season, because there's that relationship there. That relationship did not exist with Kendal Briles and Sam Pittman, but apparently over the last 2 years, it's grown, and he has decided that he's going to stick around, and it's a really good deal. And of course, it's going to come with the raise for Kendal Briles. He didn't just do this all, because he just loves Arkansas. He's going to do it for free. He's probably going to get a raise. He's making $1 million a year right now. I would guess he's probably going to get a nice little pay bump. I could see him making in the 1.5 range. I know Jason Kendall, the Toledo head coach, who was offered the offensive coordinator position at Miami as well, was reportedly offered somewhere in the $1.6 to $1.8 million range. So I would imagine that kind of gives us an idea of what Kendal Briles is going to be paid. He's going to get a nice little pay bump, and Arkansas is going to see its salary pool for assistants go up quite a bit this offseason. So really big deal for Arkansas to keep him. And I know I think it was Tyler Cass, I want to say, tweeted out a clip of his interview with Hunter Yurchek back in December, and he had said something like, we don't want money to be a reason assistant coaches leave. So that tells you right there, Arkansas is willing to play ball and make the commitment that they need to retain these top assistants and keep building on what they've already started these last 2 years.
And keep building they have done, especially in the transfer portal. Hutch, you and I talked earlier in the week about how Arkansas landed Drew Sanders from Alabama and Dwight McGlothern from LSU. I think it was the same day, a couple hours later, maybe, I can't remember. Cade Fortin from South Florida, commits as a walk-on QB. So we talked a lot about the depth in the quarterback room, and now you have plenty of depth, especially with Malik Hornsby coming back as well.
Yeah, they've got plenty of depth now, and this is huge because you don't have to worry about Landon Rogers, trying to convert back to quarterback. They really like what he brings to the table as a tight end. Maybe he plays a little bit of wide receiver. Sam Pittman said even Barry Odom's wanting to get him on defense. But regardless, you're going to be able to not sacrifice his development at those positions in order for him to move back to quarterback where he's going to be the third team scout team quarterback or something. You avoid that. You have experience there. So like if, God forbid, if something happened to KJ and then also Malik got hurt, you've got a guy that has starting experience against Power 5 opponents. Fortin began his career at North Carolina, then went to South Florida. He started 4 games in his career, and all of them have been against Power 5 opponents. I think he even started against Florida. So he's got experience starting against SEC teams. So really quality addition for Arkansas, especially when you throw in the fact that he's joining as a walk-on and he doesn't take up one of those precious few remaining spots in the 2022 class.
Alex Trader. So a couple of Georgia players have entered the transfer portal. One of them is Latavius Brini from Georgia. Arkansas hosted him for the South Carolina game on Tuesday night. A lot of people were talking about how he was in Bud Walton Arena. This is a guy that you have to assume Sam Pittman might have a previous relationship with him just coming from Georgia, but I'm looking here. He started 11 games at Nickelback for the Bulldogs this year. I mean, that a really good defensive team. So any word on him? And I mean, that would be a key pickup for Arkansas.
Yeah, it'd be a massive pickup. I don't have any information on whether or not he's leaning towards Arkansas or not, but just getting him in the building, especially for a game where you're seeing the football team be honored and you get that massive round of applause from the student section and from the entire arena, really. That's massive if you're a recruit, knowing that you have the entire university behind you. It's hard not to look at a guy like that and see, especially with kind of Arkansas losing some guys in that defensive backfield. It's hard to look at that and not think, hey, if he comes here, then he's going to be able to start and have a huge role on this defense. So I think that's also in play for him is, hey, do I want to go back to Georgia where it could be really, really tough to find snaps on the field, or can I come to a team that is not only starting to win games now, but it is really competitive in the SEC West? You can send Alabama away because they're just kind of that different breed, but Arkansas's winning games in the SEC West. It's not a bad landing spot for him at all. I think certainly it depends on what he's looking for in his new transfer destination. But you have to think that Arkansas, especially with him coming here and taking that time, has some of those things and at least is somewhere on his mind.
So he would address one of the positions that Hutch talked about in our emergency podcast on Monday, where we talked about Drew Sanders and Dwight McGlothern. Hutch, you talked about how Arkansas had really 3 positions that they needed to address: defensive line 1, defensive back 1, and then quarterback. So quarterback, it seems to be they addressed that. That's one that they got done. Defensive line, they missed out on Jackson Player from Tulsa and Mekhi Wingo from Missouri. And so now are you a little bit worried about that position? Because it feels like Arkansas, I mean, you're losing your 3 grad transfers from last year. You've talked about how, they have some depth, but you really need to bring in someone else.
Yeah, they really need a defensive tackle to kind of anchor the middle of that line. They tried getting it with Player, they tried getting it with Wingo, struck out on both of those guys. You need somebody. I don't know who. I know there was some talk about the Silvera guy from Miami. He has since committed to Arizona State. There's a couple that left Auburn. One of them is already committed to Ole Miss. You need somebody. At this point, I'm not sure if there's going to be somebody that's like an immediate difference maker. Like, I think most of those guys have already been picked up. Now, somebody could enter the portal as soon as we get done recording this, and it would be an amazing fit for Arkansas. But as of this moment, I don't know who that perfect fit would be. You may get to the point where you're just like, okay, we're going to roll with Isaiah Nichols and Torian Carter and see what we got there and see what Cam Ball can do in his second year. So I think that's still a position they're actively looking at. I know there was I don't know how you pronounce his name, Ishmael Sofser or something like that. He's originally from Louisiana. He signed with Alabama out of high school, transferred to USC, and is now in the portal again. I know that the coaching staff has followed him on Twitter. That's kind of a dead giveaway. It's like, hey, they're at least interested. So still some guys out there, but I'm just not sure if there's any, like Jackson Player made a lot of sense because he had played for Jermeel Ashley at Tulsa, but instead he decided to go home. He's from Waco and went to Baylor. Mekhi Wingo is a guy Arkansas recruited out of high school. The other 4 schools in his top 4, or the other 3 schools, did not recruit him out of high school. Arkansas did. So you thought, maybe there's an advantage there. But no, he decided to go to LSU where his old high school coach is on staff. So he just kind of got left out, based on some other, schools that were out there. So I'm a little bit concerned. But they've pulled some surprises so far. I mean, who would have thought that Jaden Hazelwood would have been a guy that would come to Arkansas, before you realize there was the Jimmy Smith connection. So I think they're still going to be looking, and maybe they wait until after spring ball because there's going to be some other quality guys enter the portal after spring that Arkansas can maybe snatch up and kind of use to fix that issue.
So before we talk about where do some of these transfers fit in on the depth chart, Hutch, I want to ask you, give us an update on the scholarship distribution because you seem to be following that better than anybody.
Yes, I mean, earlier this week, we were able to confirm that 3 guys that could have come back are not coming back. John Stephen Jones, Ryan Winkle, both those guys had eligibility left, but were honored on senior day. Shane Clennon could have come back as a super senior, but he's decided not to. So that kind of opens up some more spots. I think I want to say they've got they're at 82 for projected for the 2022 season, but then you also got to factor in, how many can they bring in, in this current class. If Miles Rouser signs next month, I believe it's 3 more guys. So maybe Latavius Brini would be one of those. Then you got a couple more spots so you could bring in a defensive tackle or another linebacker or something like that. I personally would prefer them to, maybe get another wide receiver, but does not look like they're interested in that. I would see the benefit in that quite a bit. So still some spots to work with, but they're filling up quickly.
So, okay, now we're going to talk about where they fit in on the depth chart, though. So specifically Drew Sanders and Dwight McGlothern. I feel like these are 2 guys, at least Sanders, that can come in and probably start immediately, Hutch.
Yeah, you would think Sanders would be a guy that would come in and contribute immediately because there's just not much depth at linebacker. I mean, you got Bumper Pool coming back, but you need somebody to start alongside him. And you're going to go with Andrew Parker, who's been here forever, but really hasn't played a whole lot? Or are you going to go with a guy that's really young, like a Poop Hall? Just you don't really know who that other guy's going to be. And you hope to think Drew Sanders, considering he's got starting experience at Alabama, that he would be able to come in and be that guy for you. I mean, Dwight McGlothern is another guy. He's got starting experience at LSU. You think that he could come in and fill a spot that left by Monteric Brown leaving. That would be huge. So those are 2 guys I really expect to come in and start immediately, along with Jaden Hazelwood. The guy I'm kind of wondering about is Landon Jackson, the defensive end from LSU that they signed last month. Is he going to be a guy that can come in and start immediately? I know some people have kind of already penciled him into the starting lineup, but he did not play a whole lot at LSU this past year. He appeared on special teams, nothing on defense. He had an injury his senior year of high school. Is he going to be a guy that can come in and be that guy right away? I think he's got tons of potential, and he could be really, really good down the line. But sometimes it's hard for offensive and defensive linemen to contribute immediately, and that's basically what he is. I mean, he's basically like a guy that's a freshman that doesn't have any playing experience in college. So that's the one I'm kind of keeping an eye on to see if he can crack the starting lineup in 2022.
All right, up next, Alex, it's the moment everybody has been waiting for. Your recruiting roundup. Arkansas's first junior day of 2022. Arkansas gets a commitment, and we might even have more to come, Alex.
Yeah, we might have more to come.
So we'll get to that next. And then after that, that'll be it for the HawgBeat Hour this week. So all that next.
You're listening to the HawgBeat Hour with Andrew Hutchinson, Alex Trader, and Mason Choate on ESPN Arkansas and HitThatLine.com. Now, here's your host, Mason Choate.
All right, everyone, welcome back into the HawgBeat Hour. We're doing something a little bit different this week. I recorded the first of HawgBeat's midweek recruiting roundup videos yesterday, and I think it's pretty good fit in here, pretty relevant to what's going on. So we're going to have it in here as a segment. We talk about Arkansas's newest commitment, as well as, the junior days, another potential commitment, and my wide receiver big board. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and let's get into it. All right, what's going on, guys? It's Trader here, and you're watching HawgBeat's midweek recruiting roundup. We've got a loaded show for you today. And it all starts off with Arkansas adding commitment number 6 in the 2023 class. Caleb James out of Mansfield, Texas. Huge pickup for the staff, has been a target of theirs for a really long time. Also, could we see another one sooner rather than later in that 23 class? We recap junior days, as well as taking a look at my newest big board up at HawgBeat.com. But before we get into all that, make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. We have film breakdowns. There was a new one that went up covering 2 of Arkansas's 2022 offensive linemen just today. We also have, practice clips, press conferences. We have full episodes of the HawgBeat Hour out every single Friday. Andrew Hutchinson does some great Know the Foe segments. Just always trying to add some new stuff to the YouTube. And this is, one of those new things that we're trying to add, as well as those film breakdowns every single Wednesday. As well as that, go check out HawgBeat.com. We've got everything you need to know about Arkansas athletics. We're in the heart of basketball season. Hutch, Mason, Jackson are doing a great job of covering that team. A team that is kind of finding their stride in SEC play right now, as well as baseball season being right around the corner. And it's never a bad time to talk about some Arkansas Razorback football. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. But yeah, go check out what Andrew Hutchinson, Mason Choate, and Jackson Collier are doing, as well as myself over at HawgBeat.com. Everything you need to know if you're a Razorback sports fan trying to follow what's going on with any of Arkansas's teams. Without further ado, let's get into, probably the biggest news of the week, and that is Caleb James coming out and really, doing something that I had kind of predicted for a little bit. I did put a future cast in November, but nonetheless made Arkansas his new home. Announced that he was going to be committing to Arkansas and coming to play Arkansas yesterday on his birthday. Massive pickup, 5.73 star in the Rivals database. Could argue that might be a little bit low rating wise. Currently listed as the number 33 strong side defensive end in the country. Had 20 other offers. Final 6 of Baylor, Oklahoma State, SMU, Texas Tech, or not Texas, SMU, Texas Tech, and Arkansas. That was his final 6. Came out a couple of weeks ago, and at that point, it was kind of a 2-man race between Oklahoma and Arkansas. And Oklahoma really fell off when that whole Lincoln Riley drama went on. So not too surprising, but nonetheless, it's a huge pickup for that defense. Just a couple of weeks after you get Dallas Young, able to add another defensive commit to the class. And it looks like Arkansas is really starting to build something strong there. Now the 5th ranked class in the country. Still early in the cycle, but if you keep stacking these guys, you could find Arkansas really in that top 10 race, top 15 race. When it comes down to crunch time in the 2023 cycle. James has been in town a number of times in 2021, and most recently Saturday for junior days. He had a great great junior season, 10 sacks, 94 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 fumbles recovered at Nolan Catholic this year. And he's going to be transferring to Mansfield, which is big news if you're an Arkansas fan and following recruiting, because there just so happens to be a 4-star safety target named Brendan Joseph over at Mansfield, who visited Arkansas for the Texas game, has ties to Arkansas, and really could be one of the next couple of guys to to announce that he's going to be committing to Arkansas. Really want to keep an eye on him, and now having a guy on the inside of that program to potentially recruit for you could be a huge thing in attempting to go after Joseph. I do not, however, think that we're going to see Joseph as the next commit for this 2023 class. I do believe that that's going to be on the offensive side of the ball. And I do think that it's looking like it's going to be Bixby, Oklahoma tight end. Luke has. He was ranked the number 3 tight end in the 2023 class. That's down from where he was before. Really talented kid, included Arkansas in his final schools before he committed to Oklahoma in August. And once again, with the whole Lincoln Riley fallout, there's just so much going on the trail, and with those guys who were committed or looking at Oklahoma, there's really no telling what's going to happen. But Arkansas does look to be in a very good position for Has. He has a sister and an aunt who both graduated from Arkansas, came on a visit earlier this summer, was here for junior days as well, and is sitting pretty with 33 offers. I did put in a future cast for Has to come to Arkansas over the weekend, as well as Sam Spiegelman, one of Rivals national writers, putting one in. You're seeing him pop up as well on some other sites. So it's looking like it's trending that way. Arkansas looking like the leader in the clubhouse. What's interesting about that situation, though, is Arkansas already has 2 tight end commits in the 2023 class in a really talented guy, Shamar Easter, and a really talented guy, Jaden Ham. I know Easter Ham, we've seen the pun. I'm not going to make it here, but those are 2 guys who committed back-to-back days. And really, once you saw those commits, you thought, okay, I think Arkansas is set at the position. Dow Loggins had a really solid class. And now you're seeing it pop up that, oh wow, we might be seeing another tight end come to Arkansas, and I think what I'm hearing is that that's a really big aspect in why in the pitch that Arkansas is making to Luke Has. This could go down as one of the best tight end classes in recent memory, and you better believe that Arkansas is using that as a pitch that this could be a historic group for the Razorbacks, and I think that adding Has would certainly move towards that being the case for the Razorbacks. No commitment yet, no commitment date scheduled. We don't know necessarily that that's what's locked in, but I think if Arkansas is looking for a third tight end, which I don't know that they were necessarily doing before that decommitment. I just don't think that Has is a guy you can refuse, and it's looking like he's very interested in Arkansas. So keep an eye out on that situation, as well as what we could be seeing from it. And moving on to what I think is probably, I guess you'd have to say, the second biggest bit of news from this week. It was the first of 3 junior days for Arkansas. They hosted prospects this past Saturday. They'll have prospects in town this Saturday, as well as the following Saturday, January 29th, to close it out. And despite the snow, despite the bad road conditions, the poor weather, you saw a really massive turnout for Arkansas. And I think that's really something that the coaches were very much looking forward to, but I don't know if you can say they were expecting it once they saw the forecast. And a lot of players were out there. You saw a lot of talent. You saw James, you saw Has, you saw a couple other guys, Anthony Evans and Joey Sewell were in town, 2023 commits. Then they were posting on Twitter. Joey is one of the biggest guys in terms of recruiting for Arkansas, even though he's already committed. You see him everywhere, all over Twitter, all over his Instagram. Really, he's all hog, and especially for someone who technically is an in-state kid but didn't grow up in Arkansas, you wouldn't necessarily expect it. But it's a lot of recruiting being done by Joey Sewell to make Arkansas a desirable location. So I'm sure the staff is happy with that. As for players who aren't committed, we saw 2024 Little Rock Christian quarterback Walker White in town. He is the brother of the now transferred John David White, transferred to UCA this morning. He's his brother, as well as Zach White's brother, who plays baseball. And he has 3 FBS offers right now, not one from Arkansas. And interestingly enough, he was invited to the camp. The staff said they want to take a look at him. Interestingly enough, says an Arkansas offer would mean the exact same as any other school, despite having two brothers that were at Arkansas and being a kid from Little Rock. It's really kind of interesting, and it makes you wonder, is he being real, or is he trying to just make it seem like, oh, if he gets the Arkansas offer, it's just going to be another one, so that other schools still stay interested. I'm not really sure. Nonetheless, it's a talented quarterback, and it's an interesting story to follow. As well as that, you saw a guy that I was really impressed with his size. I did a story about him before. It's Texas 4-star offensive tackle Connor Stroh. He's massive. He's 6'7", 345 pounds. And he was on campus earlier this year for the Mississippi State game, has offers from Baylor, Florida State, Indiana, SMU, Texas. Really is looking for one from Arkansas, is very fond of the place. And I think it's just a matter of time until we see a guy like Sam Pittman really go out and get an offensive tackle of that size that wants to be here. You really need to send that offer out and start building that relationship. And I think from what we've heard from Connor so far, that the foundation is there, but the offer isn't yet. And that's ultimately going to come down to be a huge part for college football players and college athletes, even more broadly. Also in Texas, we saw Ashton Porter, who's another 4-star. He's really glad that he came out to Arkansas. He's on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe the staff's trying to build that momentum. 5.84 star out of Cypress Ranch. He has an impressive offer sheet. He has 20, a lot of offers. And I talked to him in Arkansas, came away as a top school for him. They joined Baylor, Texas, and Texas Tech in his top schools. And one big reason for that was, Sam Pittman, his philosophy of getting to know him as a person before he got to know him as a player. And I think, you hear that a lot, that it's about that Pittman cares about the guys that he brings in. And I think, hearing from Porter, that's really what he's telling you, that Pittman wants to know him more as a person than a football player first. And I think that's very important when you're building trust with someone, and getting them to say, hey, my son is going to be able to come here, and I know that I can trust you. I think that's a massive part of recruiting, and it's something that it looks like Pittman's doing a pretty good job of recognizing and acting on. And finally, we have at the wide receiver position, which I did just drop a big board on. Make sure you guys take a look at that over at HawgBeat.com. If you guys want to see what Arkansas's kind of big board is looking like at the position for 2023, already have Anthony Evans locked in. Another name to keep an eye on is Cole Adams out of Owasso, Oklahoma. Had a track meet in Arkansas. Was kind of trying to figure out a way to where he could do both that and the junior day. Ended up just doing the junior day. And he said he was excited about doing that. I think he believes he made the right decision in doing that. It looks like it's Arkansas's number one target remaining in this class right now. He's a speedster. He's really, he's got wheels. He does track, but he's also able to use his hands and go up and get the ball. And that's very impressive from that position. 8 offers. He's got Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech, as well as Wisconsin and a couple others. The rest of this class is kind of hard to project position wise at the wide receiver position, just because a lot of the guys Arkansas is in on don't necessarily have the rating or the acclaim yet. I think one guy that you really should keep an eye on is in-state receiver out of El Dorado, Deandra Burns. Really watched his film this morning, was really impressed. The staff wants to get him back out there, and the staff was in on him early. Don't let the fact that there's not a rivals rating on him just yet fool you. I think he's going to be a massive target for this class as we get into the later stretch of the 2023 cycle. That is going to do it for us here on the recruiting roundup. This is the first midweek recruiting roundup we're doing. I do have a roundup that goes up in written form every Friday at HawgBeat.com, as well as, like I mentioned before, just so much more. Make sure definitely, if you're an Arkansas sports fan, to go check that out and see what we have going on over on the site, as well as, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys liked about it in the comments. Let me know what you maybe didn't like or would like to see me change. And we can certainly workshop some stuff with that said, that is going to do it for me here. I'm Alex Trader, and I will see you next time.
Good stuff from Alex Trader there. If you want to check out more of his work, more of Hutch's work, and more of my work, you can go to HawgBeat.com. As always, subscribe to the YouTube, give a thumbs up, let us know what you think, comment, tell us what you're thinking, and we'll talk to you guys next week on the HawgBeat Hour.